Want at this point welcome back Annick Cizel, Associate Professor in U.S. Foreign Policy at Paris Sorbonne University. Sorbonne Nouvelle University. Thank you for joining us here on France 24. We're in the company of Gérard Chaliand. I'll first put the question to Gérard Chaliand and then to you, Annick. Gérard, earlier you were mentioning how 2008 was where it became hopeless, where the U.S. had stayed on too long. Longest war in U.S. history.
Yeah.
What is it that the U.S. didn't understand?
What is it that they understand?
That they did not understand.
They did not understand the fact that to have an enormous technological advance was not enough. They always thought that as long as you control the territory, it's okay. And they did not understand that the important thing was not to control the territory, but to control the people. The Taliban worked at village level. They knew the language. They knew how to give justice, traditional way of justice that people could understand. And Americans, they never had those who could really speak, those who could really be inside the village. In other words, they lost the control of the population. In 2008, it was finished. I mean, the war was lost 12 years ago.
Annick Cizel, you agree?
I definitely agree, and I think what they attempted, and I'm thinking both of both cases in Iraq and in Afghanistan, was not just nation building, but just starting with institution building. An institution building in Afghanistan proved a failure as corruption remained rampant, the United States is a federation, but I'm not sure they understand anything about the mosaic of ethnic groups, of rivalries, of centuries-old rivalries in a state like Afghanistan, and the weakness of the institutions that were established. I mean, a constitution is a piece of paper. If the rule of law cannot be applied because there's not enough centralization, because the government is too weak, because democracy takes time for an electoral process to really answer to the needs, to the demands of the populations, which hardly ever happened in Afghanistan. It's how to build a nation as the people getting together and around a national purpose. This never happened in Afghanistan. At least, some elites did emerge in Kabul and elsewhere in the major cities, but the rest of Afghanistan remained like 2 centuries apart from the facade that was the sort of testimony to what NATO, to what civilian military development could bring to a country like Afghanistan.
Annick Cizel, now you've had this botched departure by the U.S., as described by Gérard Chaliand. A bit of a save, it seemed, with the fact that they were organizing this airlift, that it was ambitious so far. I'm talking about it in the past tense. I hope it's going to start again very rapidly for those who need to get out. But where do these 2 explosions leave us?
Well, actually, the word in your question, which I'm clinging to, is departure. The question I'm wondering about right now is, to what extent can the Americans leave? Planes will take off again. Officially, the war may be over, as seen from Washington, D.C., but this is an attack, of course, on the Afghan population, but these are 2 attacks on the U.S. military. There are casualties within the U.S. military, which means at least 2 things. First of all, no attack against U.S. citizens is to be left unanswered. Is the United States is the Biden administration going to have to answer. Is there going to be a response once we know, and we probably will know, who was responsible, I mean, for sure, for these two attacks? And the second thing, with the Doha Accords of February 29th, 2020, the Taliban pledged to the United States that they were going to protect US interests and citizens, and that there were never, ever going to be any more attacks from Afghan soil against US interests and US citizens. Except this is just what we've witnessed. And the Taliban were, of course, perfectly unable to stop these two attacks. So this is going to call for a major reassessment. I mean, Joe Biden and his administration cannot leave Afghanistan now without some form of response, not to say retaliation, for what's happened.
And on that score, we're getting a statement from the Taliban saying it happened in a U.S.-controlled area. I don't know if we have confirmation on that. That's what they're claiming. And they denounced Gérard Chalion, the attack. You agree with Annick Cizel? Washington can't leave without a response.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. What I can say about the outcome of the war is that in the countryside, nothing had changed. All the money was going to Kabul, and everybody knew in the cities and in the countryside that the government in Kabul was incompetent, corrupted, and unpopular. That's it. And the fact that the US was backing a government which was corrupt, incompetent, and unpopular is enough to lose a war.
Annick Cizel, one final question for you before we let you go. We were talking earlier about the Western powers that are dependent on the United States. Where does this leave them?
Ironically, I guess the NATO coalition, I mean, the NATO allies, we are talking again. Ironically, there's dialogue again because we are all under attack at the airport. It leaves us with also intelligence sharing, which was ramped up again. I mean, you probably know more at France 24 English than I do about this, but I heard some media on the British side saying that the British had warned the Americans, that their intelligence had warned the Americans that an attack was imminent. So most definitely it means that we had the G7. I mean, events are going so fast. We had the G7 just like yesterday. We were saying that the transatlantic alliance was at an all-time low. Some conservative MPs in Britain saying it was just as low as the Suez crisis of 1956. Well, now we have NATO Special Operations Forces, which are firing together at Kabul airport. Very ironically, it's probably it most likely is bringing us all together again.
Annick Cizel, many thanks for joining us here on France 24 in this special edition.